So good day class. So today we'll be talking about texture painting using Blender. So previously we were able to discuss about Substance Painter. So this time we'll try to use Blender as our main application for painting our 3D object. So so here are the following tasks that we'll be discussing for this session. So number one is that we'll try to set up 3D model for texturing and for texture painting. And then next is we'll try to learn how to use Blender's internal texture painting tools. And then after that, we'll be using Occupan as an add-on for texture painting. So yeah, we'll be starting with painting using without the use of plugins. So number one, so first we'll try to load our 3D model. So you can download the 3D model online. You can copy the link from our presentation, and then after that we can click on the download 3D model, and then basically it will download the zip file, and you need to extract the zip file and import the 3D object inside Blender. So after importing Blender, so we'll try to first. Okay, so after importing it in Blender, so for my case, what I did is that I joined all of the parts of the 3D object so that it would be easier for me to paint. But if you have extra time, what you can do is you can paint each components of the 3D object. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do is, again, we need to set up our 3D object for 3D painting. So the first thing that we need to do is to unwrap the 3D object. So just click on tab. So go to the edit mode. Okay, and then you can also split the view, or let's say you can click on UV editing here. Okay, to change the viewport mode, and then click on U. So let me just first enable the screencast plugin. Alright, so I'll press U on my keyboard and then click on Smart UV Project. So just leave the value as is, you don't need to change some of the settings. Then click Unwrap. So take note that we cannot paint our 3D object if it doesn't contain any UV map information. So after creating a UV map, we can now proceed for checking whether the normal orientation of our 3D object is proper. So what you can see here on our slide. So next is we need to check that one. So just go to the viewport overlays and then click on face orientation. So if you can see the blue violet color in the face orientation, so the face orientation is correct. But if you see some pink or peach color, so it means that there's something wrong with the direction of your normal orientation. So what we can do is we can go to the edit mode and then click on mesh, and then after clicking on mesh you can click on normals and select recalculate outside. So this is the opposite of that functionality, the calculate inside. So what you can see is pink. So if it's pink, it's really difficult for this one to be colored because you switch on other render mode, so there will be a problem with the material surface. So what we can do is to fix that is, again, go to the edit mode and then select on mesh and select normals and recalculate outside. So that's how we do the operation. Okay, So after that, we'll be setting up the material. So after inspecting the normals of our 3D object, now we are now ready to set up the material. So in order for you to paint your 3D object, so we need to set up a basic material for it. So just go to shading mode. So change the workspace into shading mode, and then just click on new to create a new principled shader, and then just plug in. So shift A. So we'll be plugging in um, an image texture node. So it's here. Okay. So this is our basic material setup. So basically, you cannot paint your 3D object if you don't have this basic material setup. So Blender requires you for you to have this material setup in order for you to properly execute this operation. So after that, we can now create an image. So just click on new in the image texture node, and then we can name it as diffuse. Okay, and then after that, we can change the resolution of our image. So basically, the higher the image, the better the quality of our texture paint material is. So for me, I'll be using 3K for now. So if your computer is capable, you can use a 4K resolution. So let's multiply it by 3 and then click on new image. Okay, so after creating a new image, basically it will tell Blender that you can now do the painting operation for this image, and it should be displayed on the base color slot of our principal VSDF material. Okay, so we can now proceed to texture painting. So done with that. Okay, so we can now start texture painting. So what we can do is we can switch to the texture painting mode here at the top. So we'll change our workspace, and then just take note of the name of our texture. So our texture image name here is diffuse.002. So we'll also switch that image here so that we can see our result. So diffuse.002. And of course, we'll also make sure that our the texture that we are currently painting in while we are in the texture paint mode is diffuse 002. Okay, so after setting it up, we can now start painting. So we can change the color here, and our color swatch or color wheel selector, and we can now start painting on the surface of our 3D mesh. So we have this really basic operators for texture painting. So you can do soften, it's like blur, and then you can also do smudge. So you can smudge this paint. Okay, so you can also do that, or you can also use clone, and of course you can perform the fill operation for your texture. Okay, so you can also see here your material being painted and the texture. So when you do some basic painting operation, you should be able to see the pattern on the opposite side of uh, texture here. So basically painting it live. So just be careful with the size of the brush. Basically, the bigger the size of the brush, the more performance the operation will need. So sometimes if you have a really big brush, your blender might uh, might lag. So yeah, smaller brush uh, yields better performance, and then bigger brush will uh, cause you to struggle. So just take note. So basically, texture painting is not yet very that optimal inside Blender. So oftentimes artists are using tools like Substance Painter or other 3D painting application or other application that specializes in 3D painting. All right, so that's how basically we do 3D painting without any plugins in Blender. Okay, so if you do have some questions along the way, so you can leave a comment on our video recording, and then you can also message me directly if you want to have more clarifications about this lesson. All right, so again, you just have to continue painting until you'll be able to achieve the final look. Okay, so next is that we'll try to use painting operation using a plugin. So for this one, so you just delete the material again, turn this off. So we'll be creating a new operation. So for this one, we'll be using the Occupan plugin. So Occupan, you can download Occupan online. So it's available on GitHub. So what you can do is you can search it online and then just click on releases here, and then you can download the latest release. Or you can also, if you're online, you can actually install this one online as well. So see, there you go. So you can search for Occupan and then click install. So you can also do that operation inside Blender if you have the Ethernet connection. So for offline users, what you can do is you can download the plugin offline and then install it on your Blender, right? So after installing, so you need to select first your 3D mesh and then click on when you open the end panel. So let's turn the screencast again. It's not showing when I switch the workspace. Alright, so let's turn that on and then select the object first and then click on quick Occupaint node setup. So what will be the plugin will do is that it will create the material node for you. Okay, so you can also turn on ambient occlusion if you want additional channel for the ambient occlusion, and then we'll be using the principled shader. So and then just click on OK. So if we switch to the shading mode, this is what Occupaint is doing in your material setup. So the Occupaint is adding a principled BSDF, and then it's adding a Occupaint ambient occlusion multiply, and its node setup for its material for you to be able to paint inside this inside Blender. Okay, so with that, we can proceed with texture painting again, but this time it's a different process. So you'll be needing Occupaint, okay, and then you'll be adding a bunch of layers to create a unique effect in your texture painting pipeline or workflow. So this is an example of artwork that was done or that was painted using Occupaint. Okay, so this is how we do the setup. Make sure that the object is selected. Okay, and basically Occupan works by having multiple layers for your texture. So if, for example, so we have these different channels. So we'll be adding basic solid color. So you can also add image texture. If, for example, you created a texture material maker and then you can import it here. You can also do that. You can have a solid color or texture patterns or other um, layers that would basically enable you to add customized textures inside your 3D object. So what we'll be doing right now is we'll be adding a basic solid color. Okay, so basically this will override the color of our object. And the one thing that I like with Occupaint is that remember our operations with Material Maker in which we are using math. So the equivalent for that one is masking. So we can basically mask these colors to create a unique effect inside our um, texture painting workflow. So for example, I wanted to add an ambient occlusion in my 3D object. So instead of painting the ambient occlusion manually, I can automatically add ambient occlusion by means of texture baking. So texture baking is basically an operation in which you'll be able to generate custom uh, textures that is based on the data of the 3D mesh. So we'll be using PK and we'll be using sorry, GPU compute so that we can have faster computation for generating these textures, and then just click on OK. So wait for a few seconds to for Blender to bake the texture. So basically the bigger the file, the longer it will take for us to bake the texture. Oh, I forgot, we should uh, have edited the ambient occlusion distance. So as what we learned before in our previous discussions, the bigger the ambient occlusion distance is, the more prominent the ambient occlusion would be. So let's wait for a few seconds. So I'm not sure if you already seen this one, but we'll try to change the color to black so that you can see. So this is how the ambient occlusion would look like, but it's not the ambient occlusion that we want. So what we can do is we can invert the image. So this is the ambient occlusion that we like. So if we try to switch that on and off, you can see how the ambient occlusion affects our 3D object. Okay, so we'll try to do that again. So we'll try to um, bake the mask again. So we'll try to add an ambient occlusion, and this time we'll try to stand as the distance for the ambient occlusion, and to make it faster, sige, we'll try 10 to 4 so that we don't have to wait for a longer time. So 10 to 4 and then click OK. You can also increase the samples if you don't want some anti-aliasing occur. Then we'll invert the image. Okay, there you go. So we now have better ambient occlusion with our texture paint. So I can turn that on and off so that you can see the effect of ambient occlusion. So if you're switching to solid mode, basically you cannot see that because we're using a plugin. So to switch to material mode so that you can see the texture painted material. Okay, so that's ambient occlusion. Next is curvature. So curvature is basically detail for surface of a 3D object that would basically enhance further the appearance of the surface. So what you can do is you can click the add button here again. We'll try to add a solid layer. Okay, solid color. And yeah, we'll try to use black again. Okay, and this time for the mask, we'll be using cavity. You can also increase the resolution for the cavity. So basically, the bigger the resolution, like number of samples, the better the quality of the cavity is. So let's click OK, and then let's wait a few seconds. So I'm currently using 8 samples for this operation. So while it is baking, you can see here on our presentation, we already added the ambient occlusion and then the cavity. Okay, so it's basically done. So let's try to check. Okay, so if you're not satisfied, you can always do the invert image operation. So you can see here the result of the cavity texture, which greatly enhances the details that you can see on our texture paint. So instead of painting this manually, you can do this automatically with Occupan. So notice the difference after adding curvature map. So this is ambient occlusion, and this is curvature. You can also change the operator for how the color channel is blending. You can use multiply, you can use add, you can use other operators. So it's up to you on how to tweak the settings so that you can achieve the the material that you wanted to generate and then the painting effects that you wanted to achieve. Okay, so that is our cavity. By the way, you can also change the intensity of the layer. So 0.0, you can put 0.5 so to make it a bit lighter, and so on. So depending on your setup. You can also further adjust how the mask is being influenced by clicking on this settings menu and then add a modifier. So what we can do is we can add a curve modifier. You can use a curve modifier to intensify the curvature or of course decrease its intensity. So that's how we use the curvature map. So you can often see this style on uh, low poly games. So we call this a stylized texture painting. Okay, so of course we can also add dust. So if you want some dust dust surface, I mean. So let's add another solid color. We'll have white for the dust. Okay, and then click on mask and then select dust. So it will also generate texture for the dust. So currently, Occupaint have a limited number of um, baked materials. But other applications like your Substance Painter have more options and more control for adding these effects. So this is now our dust uh, texture. We can also change again its appearance by influencing our curvature, curve I mean. So you can add additional curve here and there to make it more dusty or stylized. Okay, so this is without dust and this is with dust. So again, Occupan will really speed up your process for texture painting your 3D object, and it will also save your time, especially if you're using free application like Blender. Okay, and then after that, I can just easily change the color. So I'll just change the color of our wood hammer here, and I can also change the color of my dust like so. And I think no need for the cavity. Yeah, so we now have a better base um, texture painting and 3D object. So we're done. Thus, yeah, so painting manually is also easy in with the use of Occupaint. So what you can do is instead of adding a solid, you can use an image. Okay, so let's click new image here. Okay, then just click OK. And then if we switch to texture paint, so let's switch to texture painting mode. So I'll try to change the brush size. So I wonder why screencast keys is not fully functioning. Alright. So after that, I can switch the channel color to color because I wanted to influence the color only. And then I can now start painting. So start painting here. So the back part of this object is using rock material. So as you can see, it's really easy. It's still using the Blender internal for painting, but it just basically reorganizes things and enable us to add layers while we are doing the painting operation. So if we do is this manually without a plugin, it's a bit tedious to set up, and basically we don't have options for layers using the internal painting engine of Blender. So there you go. So as you can see, it's really easy to texture paint our object here. Sorry about that. Okay, all right. And then yeah, as you can see also in this example, I've used the dust mask to add some moss um, texture in our 3D mesh here. So again, it's up to you on how you can enhance the visuals of our 3D mesh with the use of painting, so painting techniques. So we'll be adding another layer, color, and then let's have some background. Then try to paint this one inside. By the way, you can also reorganize your layers. So just click this button up and down so that you can influence how they will affect our surface, 3D surface. Like for example, I've added here a layer at the top and I want to put it at the bottom perhaps so that I can still see my ambient occlusion and cavity texture. So you can also use screen, or let's say, I think add it's a much better option. So as you can see, it's really a bit laggy now. Okay, so we can also change the color. Let's say a bit like this one. So again, you have the freedom to use whatever tools that you like. This is only an option, but again, the painting tools in Blender is also very powerful. Okay, so if you're done, you can press Ctrl S to save all of these textures. You can also edit this texture later on with other texture editing applications. And of course, in addition, you can also add, let's say, patterns. So I'll be adding a solid color here. So to give you a quick demo, then I'll be adding a mask, and then I'll be adding. Uh, shall we have noise perhaps? So this is using noise. So we'll be increasing the size of the noise. Sorry. And then after that, we can, of course, change its blending mode or change its color. So currently we're using multiple eyes. Let's try to pick a better color. And then we'll also try to decrease. So just a subtle effect. Okay, so I think that's already good. So we added a texture pattern at the top. And then for the final touches, we can add a final lighting effect. So the lighting effect is a fake lighting. So what we'll be doing is we'll be creating a fake lighting in our 3D mesh. So to do that, you just have to add a solid color, and then on the solid color, we'll just have to add a fake lighting. So just click OK. And this is our fake lighting. So what we can do is we can drag the light direction at the top like this one. Okay, and then we'll also change the blending mode. Let's try multiply or screen, and just decrease the influence, let's say overlay. So it's overlay. Yeah, it's better. Okay, so we'll not be finishing this all. Okay, so if we have more time, we will be able to complete our texture painting. And then the final option is to do the rendering. So we can turn the scene world off so that we can pick a specific HDRI to test our texture painting. Okay, let's delete this one. Okay, so if again this would basically end up our presentation for today. So if you do have additional questions, feel free to drop a message. Don't hesitate to ask some questions if you need some help with the use of these tools. So again, the prerequisite for this one is that you have a good background in our material maker um, activities and lessons. So this would basically enhance your knowledge and um, learnings in using those techniques and applying them for texture painting. Okay, so that's it for now. Thank you very much, and I'll be uploading this video on YouTube as well.